this is how I grew up, with a lot of expectations from my parents, a lot of expectations from my siblings, and had to be the best one. So I was extremely studious, worked with some development projects as well, even in school. When you're the eldest, it's like you're teaching everybody. So even as a child, I used to teach my siblings and their friends and the cousins something or the other. I was extremely introvert. So where everybody would go on a sports week, I would go and study in the library and copy out only the textbooks. So the moment you let your brand go, come back down, you spring up to better heights. And this is where training comes in for everybody, for everyone, the tutors specifically. I was blessed in the fact that I had some amazing teachers, and I cannot forget anything ever that they've ever taught me. My passion for reading, my overall, my personality, my integrity that developed, simple virtues of right and wrong and truth and false. The child who's coming has to be handled with a lot of care. They like those very delicate assets of everybody's life, For a parent, they're the most important asset. So they have to be handled with a lot of care.
Hello and welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast, the podcast that brings you the latest in the world of tutoring, edtech and education, and hopefully inspires in you the big change that each and every one of us is capable of. Qualified Tutor is an industry-leading tutor training organisation and online tutoring community for thousands of tutors around the world. This podcast is the voice of this community, where we aim to hear from tutors, teachers, entrepreneurs, coaches, business experts, students, tutorpreneurs, and more from the world of tutoring about what inspires them every day, how they can help tutors like you, and what they've learnt about tutoring along the way. The question is, what will you learn today? Hello and welcome to the 132nd episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. My name is Ludo Miller, the host of this podcast. Welcome back to regular listeners. Welcome for the first time to any of you for whom this is your introduction to the Qualified Tutor Podcast, and a very warm welcome to our guest today, Misbah Iqbal. Misbah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ludo.
It's been a lovely journey we've had so far with Eximus Education, of which you are Chief Operations Officer. It's been great to get to know you and Haris, the founder, and I think there's a lot more to be shared between the organizations and for Eximus to deliver to our community and our audience. So thank you very much for joining us. For those of you listening today who haven't come across Misbah and Eximus Education before, they are a wonderful London-based agency who provide really very high-quality tuition to their network of clients, and also here in the UK and also abroad. They have tutors from all over the world delivering really top-quality tuition, both online and in person. Misbah herself was previously a director of business optimization at Green Energy Supplier and a training and development manager at a digital outsourcing firm in Pakistan. So really with this strong background in finance and management, but also a really strong professional development and training understanding. The last time we spoke, Misbah admitted that she was a self-confessed disciple of the great Tony Robbins and also one of our favorites here, Simon Sinek. So really a really deep shared understanding there. And Misbah speaks so eloquently about humanity and empathy in education, something that's right at the core of our values here at Qualified Tutor. So I think Misbah's tone will strike a real chord with you today, our cherished audience. And of course, don't forget to let us know your thoughts on the podcast by heading to our community, the Love Tutoring community, or emailing me at ludo@qualifiedtutor.org. But without further ado, Misbah, thank you for coming onto the podcast. What's giving you reason to smile today, Misbah?
Thank you very much, Ludo. So, smile, of course, I'm speaking to you. Every day brings up a new beginning, new opportunities, a better life, a lot of optimism. So, every day starts with a smile, and it's got to end with a smile. And this is how I start my day. A lot of gratitude.
What a wonderful intro to you, to our podcast, Misbah. Thank you. Now, regular listeners will know that we like to invite our guests to cast their minds back to their school days, to reflect a little bit on how teachers once perceived them, and how necessarily they perceived themselves. It's often a really amusing way to see where a guest has come to in their career. Now, I know, as you've been saying, Misbah, that you weren't able to find any school reports, but do you mind telling us a little bit about your reflections on what you were like as a school child?
Okay, so I think a lot of what I am today is of course because of my, the time that I spent as a child in the school and with my parents, and of course being with the South Asian culture. And I don't know how much that resonates with the West, but in the South Asian culture, the eldest child, there's a lot of burden. And that burden may not be of monetary value, but a lot of, start of creating values. So, the eldest child has to be the best at everything, the best at studies, the best in integrity, the best in values, because you got to be an example to everybody who's, coming behind you. So probably this is how I grew up, with a lot of expectations from my parents, a lot of expectations from my siblings, and had to be the best one. So I was extremely studious. Worked with some development projects as well, even in school. When you're the eldest, it's like you're teaching everybody. So even as a child, I used to teach my siblings and their friends and the cousins something or the other. I'm very blessed in with that, because my parents had, of course, a lot of expectations. But the first child, you put in everything that you want that person, you want everything to go into that child. So I got a lot of values from them, which I was supposed to pass on, of course. And then I was blessed in the fact that I had some amazing teachers. And I cannot forget anything ever that they've ever taught me. My passion for reading, my overall, my personality, my integrity that developed, simple virtues of right and wrong and truth and false. And I understand there are always gray matters, but I grew with a lot of, values in me. And all of this and whatever I did after that is the credit goes to them, my amazing, amazing, amazing teachers and my wonderful parents. And but yes, a part of that, I was extremely introvert. So where everybody would go on a sports week, I would go and study in the library and not only the textbooks, but a lot of reading of history and culture. So this is something that has been a part of my life, and probably that is the reason why I love to impart knowledge and to travel and learn more and go into the smaller streets and learning those cultures and telling everybody, adapting those, bringing changes to whatever I do in my life, but unlearning every time, bringing myself to zero, create a brand, make something of yourself, then bring it down to zero again, learn from the beginning. And I guess that is how I've been able to achieve newer heights every time.
It's amazing how often guests on this podcast talk about the impact of their teachers in shaping who they become. And I think that's an amazing, if not slightly, frightening part of being a teacher, is that, or not frightening, but, the kind of the responsibility that we have as educators to take that role. I mean, you as I mentioned, your background is in finance and business management, but you have this real clear understanding of what education means and how best to make it effective and enjoyable. What skills and learnings do you think you've been able to take from your career in finance into tutoring?
I think financial management itself brings in a lot of structure and logic to what I do, because I believe in doing things from the heart. So anything I do, a lot of heart and a lot of my soul is there. But somehow I think that logical part has to also step in and say, okay, let's structure it, you know? And that comes from my Excel sheets and my financial models that I had made. And those numbers that I worked on to forecast, at times on stock valuations. So I used to be an investment analyst at one time. And, understanding, reading a lot of newspapers comes from there. So what's happening in the economies and how is it going to affect the financial markets, and whatever affects the financial markets eventually affects simple households, our spending patterns. And probably that is also one of the reasons why in Eximus we work on creating affordable education solutions for lower income households as well. Because there's one thing that we believe in, and I, as an educator, I've trained a lot of people in my life, worked with a lot of students who were underprivileged as well, to help them attain at least, some kind. Because, with us, probably in South Asia, how education levels are. People do not have access to even, basic education. And I've done that all my life. And now Eximus also comes up with a lot of, objective and intention of, because of course we work in the UK mainly. And even in the UK, if you see around 45% of households have, and this is till March 2021, by the way, as per a survey, around 45% of households had a weekly income of only less than £600. Tutoring is talking about, and inflation. We reached, I think we've hit an inflation of 10%. We've never done that before since very long time. I think all of that, and understanding how economies work and how demand and supply work, how inflation is affecting households. Would they be still able? Of course, school is free, so they can go and study. But would they be able to get tutoring? I mean, even the least probably out there is £30 an hour. But at a household that earns less than £600 a week, and let's say even if the child is in GCSE, and if you take, let's say, 4 the most difficult subjects, let's say, physics and chemistry and maths, and let's say biology, 30 into 4 is £120 a week. Earnings less than £600, where you also have, and this is before tax, by the way. How would they be able to afford a £120 tuition for 4 most important subjects and grades? At the end of the day, the way education is structured all over the world, and I believe in celebrating efforts, but grades are important at the end of the day for university. And how are the kids, unless they're extremely motivated, extremely self-motivated, how will they be able to afford those? And I've been speaking to a lot of parents, and I think my finance background has helped me understand all of that, and not being a complete, and that is where my humanistic approach comes in, that, that logical part and my humanistic part does not make me a complete, cutthroat businesswoman. And that's what Tony Robbins also says. What is the need that you want to fulfill? Are you really there to help people? Because the moment we start sending out abundance, it just comes back multifold. And it helps us help more. So this is what we believe in over here at Eximus, both me and Haris.
It's beautiful, Misbah. It really is. It's built. You've built something on such solid foundations there, both practical, i.e., both of your backgrounds in the professional lives, but also theoretical and sentimental values that you've built this on. And one of those other values that you hold so dear is caring truly for the professional development of your team. And And that is, truly admirable and something that we'd love to touch on here, because it's obviously something that's so key to who we are as an organization. But why are training and development so key to success then in education, Misbah?
Okay, so see, as I said before, unless you're ready, and I believe everyone has the ability, so I will not say unless you have the ability to learn, because everybody does, you just don't want to tap it at times. But unless you're willing to learn, unlearn and learn, I would say, because, at times, and a lot of researchers have proved this, after a certain time in life, a child doesn't learn anything new. So, because the base is already there till 5, 6 years of age. And whatever new comes in, it just has to pass through that filter. So, whatever new comes in, you actually evaluate, oh, does it make sense to me? It doesn't make sense to me. Why doesn't it make sense to me? Because I have certain clear, rigid values in my mind. And that is the reason I'm not open to take up new concepts. So unless you're ready to let go of this filter, empty it, and then learn again, you will never be able to grow further. And I remember one of my mentors actually told me, you've created a brand of yourself, Misbah, and you need to let go of this. Because what happens is when you work really hard all your life and you bring yourself somewhere over here, and then you see, okay, all right, I know more, I'm more successful. And then all of a sudden, right in front of you, there are people who are like, here, I know, my God, they're helping so many people, they're changing lives. And you get inspired and you're like, okay, why am I not able to go up? Why am I not able to go? Because you're not ready to, let it go. So the moment you let your brand go, come back down, you spring up to better heights. And this is where training comes in for everybody, for everyone, the tutors specifically, because, and I've been a teacher for a very, very, very long time, like more than 20 years. And I tell you, when you're a teacher and then you've learned so much. And for example, I did not do my PhD for a lot of reasons, but but I have seen then you've made certain concepts of yourself, and it's very unlikely that you're ready to learn. And because of that, somewhere you become stagnant. So you're only ready to learn something that is a part of your area, which is what I do not believe in. I believe unless, okay, fine, I know finance, very good. Something new in finance, I will learn. But let's say something new in marketing, I will not learn. It doesn't make sense, right? Because nowadays, it's not like finance works separately, marketing works separately, management works separately. It has to be an integrated approach. Only then you become successful. Only then you can help more people. And unless you're ready to do that, either as a teacher or as a tutor or as a person, you will not be able to impart that to the child who's coming. And the child who's coming has to be handled with a lot of care. They like those very delicate assets of everybody's life, For a parent, they're the most important asset. So they have to be handled with a lot of care, where, yes, they will be exposed to the toughness of life. But with that, they have to know that somebody has their back. And that can only happen very less people are ready to jump because they know that there is nothing on the back. So probably not something monetary at the back. If you're at the back, if they have the values from you, if they have the right energy from you, if they do not have that rigidness from you, only then they will be able to take chances in life, take risks in life. So unless you're ready to do that for yourself, unless you're ready to learn new concepts, unless you're ready to, unlearn whatever you've learned and adapt new ideas, because every generation is bringing up new ideas. I mean, probably when we were kids, we did not even know what smartphone is. And now, I mean, a small 2-year-old child will probably download an app on your phone. It's crazy. My nieces will do that. My nephew will do that. It's so beautiful. So if I'm not ready to unlearn and learn those new ideas. Because I started with very less probably proficient in tech, and of course my team is full of younger people, so they're very good in tech. Besides all other things, but yes, I probably have more experience in other things. But if unless I was ready to sit with them and learn from them new things in tech, I wasn't able to incorporate those into the tutoring as well. So the child who's coming up is very good with tech. And if they cannot resonate with us, how will they learn? They would look at us as something, an idol over here. And they will never be able to learn from us. Because we will just be there, okay, I'm there. I have to come down to their level and learn.
So it's about being open to that. And it's about having the confidence to know that taking a step down means taking 2 steps up. It's so powerful what you're saying. And I know it comes from a real grounding in both the theory and the practice of this. You've been doing training in several businesses and organizations for, as you say, for many, many years. So any tutors with Eximus Education, you're very lucky to have Misbah as your head of training and someone who's caring for your professional development. Misbah, when you mentioned when we last spoke that as part of your training programs at Eximus, tutors take part in reflection and empathy exercises. What role does this self-reflection that you're talking about there play in an educator's development? And how is this important for students as well?
Okay, so everything that I've spoken about till now is self-reflection, honestly. One of somebody who I learned from the most used to always say, wherever you get stuck, check yourself. And wherever I got stuck in my life, I would always do that, check myself. So this checking myself does not have to come occasionally whenever I get stuck. It has to come with everything that I do. So after this podcast, I may sit down and write what I could have done better, what I could have said better, right? And probably next time when I talk, those things would have improved. This is again related to the same thing that we said earlier, being open, as you said, being open to, take a step back and learn again. Unless I'm ready to, because, you're the best self-critic, right? So the best critic to yourself would be yourself. So if I'm not ready to do that, if I'm not ready to take feedback from myself, how would I take feedback from others? And if I'm so rigid and not ready to change, what reflection would that be on the student who comes? So it's not only about teaching 2 + 2 = 4, right? Because even if you're teaching 2 + 2 = 4, the way you teach it changes a child's life. So unless you're ready to self-reflect after every class that you've done, and I know that they're very busy and there are a lot of classes in a day, probably this can happen after a week, or I would rather suggest at the end of the day before you sleep. So you write down all the activities that you've done up till now and whatever courses, whatever classes you've taken. And you think of each child as, as a very important project of yours, even if you're just teaching them 2 + 2. And then when you start doing that and you're reflecting on how you can make things better, things will change. And the best activity that I have learned since past few years is writing down. So, saying things orally, you usually forget. When you start writing things down, more ideas come. And this really helps. It has always helped me since these years that I've been doing it. So, yeah. Did I answer your question?
More than enough. Okay, so just before we finish here, Misbah, because I've got one more main question that we always ask our wonderful guests, but I just want to focus on that little point just there, just a little bit more, because what you're saying, I feel that what you're saying is self-reflection can and should be built into an educator's routine a little more often. And you've given one little tip there, which is to write things down after you complete a task or an activity or a session about what you could improve on and also what went well. Do you have any other tips for an educator who's sitting in now listening to this podcast about how to embed self-reflection into their routine? Are there any other tips that you've learned that can help that happen?
So, see, I'll tell you what I usually do. I usually write the things down at the end of the day and then think of how things can be done better. Think of the next day and write things down again. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to change what I did yesterday. That's one thing that I do. One more thing that I've learned from, I guess, from every book that I read and from the most successful people in the world. And it's crazy how the most successful people in the world bring in meditation into business. And that there's a difference between imagination and visualization. And this is something that I do first thing in the morning. I try to wake up early and do it in the morning, but I do it any times in the day. And that is visualizing how the class will be. And if you pick up, and even Muhammad Ali, some amazing. You pick up anybody who's been a great sportsman, actually visualize the whole match before, and the whole match where they're winning and etc. So that really works before doing anything. So if I think that is one thing very, very important. If you visualize how that child is benefiting from what you taught. So it's like, okay, so you imagine the class going on, that a child learning everything, absorbing everything, and at the end of the day, getting good results, becoming a better person, as well as getting good grades. And they're extremely happy and the parents are happy. And when you visualize this before, that energy passes on when you're teaching a child. And trust me, I mean, if you can pick up science, you can pick up studies. It has worked for everybody if you do it with the right intention. So that is something, it's an amazing tip. And if somebody can do it, it's going to change the game completely.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that the Eximus tutors are imbued with that sense of hope and that sense of practice, that sense of knowledge about how to improve that within their child. You're not just improving the grades, you're improving their ability to learn, in the future as adults, which is such a huge skill. Misbah, this is really very powerful stuff, and hopefully will be things that educators listening to this can build into their tutoring sessions today, tomorrow, as soon as they've kind of come to the end of this episode. It's not a huge step that you are teaching or educating here. These are small, simple, repetitive steps that will go a long way. So thank you. And now, brief word from last week's guest, Lauren Johnston.
I think for me, what I learned about being on the podcast was that actually I have so much to share. All the work and effort that I put in every single day deserves to kind of be recognised. And you guys as a network has provided me the pillar to do that. So I'm really, really, really thankful for that. I loved being a guest because it's totally out my comfort zone. My first thing that I've ever done. I've never ever done anything like this before. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. What I would say to a future guest is be uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable. It's okay to be in that space because I have learned so much from being in that space. Please, if you're on the fence about thinking about it, just do it. It's such an incredible thing to do.
Just before we finish here, I'd love to ask, Misbah, because there's so much that you have conducted in the past and in your career, and I know that there's so much more to come. But could you give our listeners a little insight into what's next for you? What's next for Misbah Iqbal?
So Eximus is a part of me. So if you say what's next for Misbah Iqbal, it's taking Eximus to every household in the UK. And where people say sky's the limit, for me, sky's not the limit. There's much above the sky. And I completely believe in it. I have a lot of faith in it. Me and Haris do things with a lot of, good intention, with the intention of helping people. And we really want to take it to every household. Just like Julia said the other day, when you speak to a parent, they should ask, are you a qualified tutor? In the same way, I was telling Haris that the other day, and before that, remember I told you that every household will know Eximus, and every household would want their kids to learn from our tutors. So I guess that's one thing that I really have the vision of.
What an excellent vision, Misbah, and one that's already in motion. So, listeners, thank you for tuning in and checking in with the Qualified Tutor podcast. Once again, it's amazing to know that there are people out there who are taking something from these conversations, and hearing from you in the community or even just privately is something that really encourages me and motivates me to keep doing these conversations. Misbah, you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for joining us. What is the best way that people can get in touch with you straight after this?
I am available on email all the time. It's misbah@eximuseducation.com. It's MISBAH @eximuseducation.com. Available on email all the time. I'm very, very, very active on LinkedIn and on Facebook. So if you see Misbah Iqbal, you're going to find me on social media, except for Instagram and, the other stuff.
We'll get there for those ones. Yeah, there's always time. Yeah, no, absolutely. LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can always contact Misbah by email. Next week, we'll be speaking to the wonderful Arthur Moore from Tea and Teaching podcast, looking at partnerships and collaborations in education podcasting, and also a little bit about the role of teaching and the interplay between teaching and tutoring, which is something that is so crucial in today's education environment. But Misbah, for one final time, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you very much for giving the opportunity, Dodo. Thank you very much.
Take care. You. And we'll see all you listeners next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Qualified Tutor podcast. Whether you're a regular listener of this podcast or you've just stumbled across it, join the Qualified Tutor podcast group within the Qualified Tutor community to stay up to date with our latest news, offers, workshops, and of course, simply to meet other tutors like you. Whatever your level as a tutor, our training courses will be the next step in your professional development. Visit qualifiedtutor.org/training to find out more about our CPD accredited and Ofqual recognised courses, the first of their kind in the tutoring industry. Your student deserves the best tutor possible. Make that happen today by joining Qualified Tutor.